Lish, my youngest daughter, called me 3 Sundays ago and said, "Mom, we need to talk about your situation." I am 90 years old. I knew immediately what she meant. A nursing home. That's what they were all thinking about. That was the thing none of my daughters dared to say out loud, but they had all been considering it for months. I noticed it in the way they looked at me when they thought I wasn't paying attention, in the phone calls they had with each other that they abruptly ended the moment I entered the room. My name is Pilar Fuentes Machena. I've tried almost everything that was suggested to me, and I want to tell you what worked and what broke something inside me. Because what I ended up doing is something no one talks about. Not on TV, not in the brochures you get at the doctor's office. Everyone always says the same thing, don't they? Come live with us. Hire someone to help you. Go somewhere you'll be well taken care of. 3 options. Always the same 3 options. As if the life of a 90-year-old could be neatly summed up in a short list. Aurelio and I had 44 years together. 44 years with someone who hummed in the kitchen while preparing breakfast. Someone you could tell the little things of the day to. Someone who would take your hand when the world felt too big. When he passed away, my oldest daughter wanted me to move in with her right away, but I said no. I told her I had to stay in my apartment. There, where all our things were, where Aurelio was still somehow present. She wasn't happy, but she respected it. At first, being alone was bearable. I could still manage everything. I cooked, cleaned, went to Mass. On Sundays, my friends from the knitting group would come over for coffee. The apartment was full of my things, my photos, my order, my way of having everything in its place. But time does what it always does. It changes you in ways you don't notice until one day you realize you're no longer the same. My knees began to protest on the stairs. My hands trembled when I tried to open certain jars. I'd walk into a room and stand there, not knowing why I had gone in. I'd just stand there, staring at the walls, wondering if my mind was betraying me. One morning, I slipped getting out of the shower. It wasn't serious. I grabbed the towel rack and nothing happened, but my heart pounded so hard I thought it would break my ribs. That night, I lay awake thinking of all the stories you hear. An elderly woman found only after 3 weeks because a neighbor noticed she wasn't collecting her mail. An old man dying alone in his apartment while the world outside just kept going. I didn't want my daughters to get that kind of call, so I called Karen. I told her it might be a good idea if I moved in with her for a while, just until I felt a little better. She was happy. She said she'd been worried for a long time but didn't want to pressure me. Her husband, Javier, thought it was a good idea too, and my grandchildren were excited that Grandma would be living with them. The first week was lovely, truly lovely. Dinners where we all sat together at the table. I cooked again, did my things, the stew on Mondays, the croquettes Aurelio had loved so much. My grandchildren laughed at my stories. I felt like I was part of something again, like I wasn't just taking up space in the world. But in the second week, life went on. Carmen and Javier worked long hours. My grandson had soccer practice. My granddaughter had English lessons and violin classes. Some days they left the house before I was even awake and didn't come back until dinner. I spent the whole day alone in that house. Only now, I was alone in someone else's house, and that's different. It's lonelier in a way I can't quite explain, but you feel it in your bones. Then the little things started. "Mom, can you use less salt? Javier has high blood pressure." "Mom, turn the TV down a bit. The kids are studying. We're going out on Saturday." "Mom, you'll be okay here, right?" No one was cruel. No one wanted to make me feel like a burden on purpose. They were just living their lives, and I was in the middle of it. One evening, I heard something that probably wasn't meant for my ears. Carmen was on the phone with her sister. She didn't know I was in the kitchen making chamomile tea. She said, "I know it's the right thing, but I'm exhausted. I can't even go grocery shopping without wondering if she's okay, and everything has to be done her way." I stood there, cup in hand, and something inside me broke a little. Because that's when I understood. Living with your own children doesn't always take away the loneliness. Sometimes it makes it bigger. You're surrounded by people, and yet you're invisible. You're sitting right there in the living room, and yet no one really sees you. After 2 months, I told Carmen I was going back to my apartment. She tried to convince me to stay longer, but I saw the relief on her face. She loved me, but she was glad I was leaving, and that hurt in a different way. Back in my apartment, I hired help at home. First, one girl came, then another, then another. Every time someone new came, I had to explain everything from scratch, where things were, how I liked my coffee, what time I got up. And all the while, the savings Aurelio and I had built up over decades, cent by cent, slipped away like water between my fingers. I was tired. I kept spending money I couldn't really afford. So I stopped. That's when Carmen got serious. She found a nursing home. A clean place with a good reputation, they said. She wants you to try it for a month. The day I arrived, it felt like I was checking into a hotel you could never leave. Beige walls, beige carpet, beige bedspread, everything beige, as if someone had decided that old people couldn't handle colors anymore. Everything was on a schedule, not a suggestion, a schedule. Breakfast at 7 a.m., lunch at 2 p.m. I had never in my life eaten dinner at 6 p.m., never. But there I was, sitting at the table at 6 p.m. sharp. And in the evenings, if I wanted to read a little, like I had done all my life, the lights in the hallway were turned off at 10 p.m. If they saw light under your door, someone would come and knock. Ms. Pilar, it's time to sleep. I'm 90 years old. I've made my own decisions for 9 decades, and now a girl the age of my granddaughter was telling me when to go to bed. One beautiful afternoon, I wanted to go to the courtyard to get some fresh air. There was a gentle breeze, the sky was clear, the first stars were coming out. I went to the door, and a nurse stopped me. Ms. Pilar, courtyard time ends at 7 p.m. That's the house protocol. That sentence became my prison. The house protocol. I just wanted a moment outside. I wasn't confused. I wasn't in danger. I just wanted a little air and peace. She told me if something happened to me, she'd be responsible. I went back to my room and cried. Really cried. Because I understood what I was there. Not a person, but a responsibility. A risk. A problem that needed to be managed. We all sat there waiting. Waiting to die. And I wasn't even that sick. I could walk, I could think, I could take care of myself. But there I was, living as if I had already given up. After 3 weeks, I called Karen and told her to come get me. She said I had promised to try it for a month. I told her I had tried enough. I'd rather struggle in my own apartment and be free than sit comfortably in a cage. The day I left, the sun seemed brighter. I could breathe better. But nothing in my apartment had changed. I still couldn't manage everything on my own. I still needed help. For several days, I sat by the window looking at the street, wondering what to do next. The situation was the same. Only the place had changed. Then something happened that I never expected. One morning, I went for my usual walk downstairs. I still do it. Slowly, but I do. In the building's entrance, I ran into my neighbor from the 4th floor. Her name is Lucia. She had only lived in the building for a few months. I'd seen her sometimes in the elevator. We had only exchanged brief greetings. But that day, she had a look on her face I recognized immediately. The look of someone who had been carrying too much for too long. She was on the phone, her voice tense. I can't leave early again. They told me if I'm late one more time, I'll get a warning. She hung up, and her eyes were full of tears she didn't want to let fall. I knew a little about her situation because another neighbor had told me. Her father had moved in with her 6 months ago, a 78-year-old man with dementia. Her husband worked out of town on construction sites and was away from home for months at a time. She was alone with her father, her job, with everything. Without thinking too much, I walked up to her. Lucia, I said, if you need someone to stay with your father for a while so you can go, I'm home almost all day. She looked at me as if I had offered her something she could hardly believe. I can't ask you that, she said. You're not asking, I said. I'm offering. She hesitated. Then she said yes. She told me her boss had been warning her for weeks that there would be consequences if she was late again. She said her father's name was Domingo, and that in his good moments he was a calm man, but sometimes he got scared of people he didn't know. The next morning I knocked on her door. I felt a little silly, standing in the stairwell at 90 years old, waiting to take care of a man I didn't even know. Lucia opened the door, already dressed and ready to leave, with that restrained haste of someone who had been running for months. She led me into the living room. Domingo was sitting in his armchair looking out the window. An older man, white hair, big hands, the hands of someone who had worked hard his whole life. Lucia introduced me to him. He looked at her without recognizing her. I saw that. I saw that he looked at her as if she were a stranger, and I also saw the pain that caused her, that fleeting pain she tried to hide before giving me 2 kisses and leaving. I stayed alone with Domingo. I sat in the chair across from him. He looked at me. I looked at him. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then he pointed to the window and said, "Good light today." I said, "Yes, the light is good today." He asked if I lived nearby. I said I lived in the apartment downstairs and had been in the building for many years. He nodded, as if that made sense to him. He asked me my name. I said, "Pilar." He repeated my name slowly, as if he were trying it out. So we sat there, talking about little things, the weather, how the neighborhood used to be. He had memories that surfaced and disappeared again with no order. Sometimes he said something completely clear. Other times he lost himself mid-sentence and stared ahead with that look of someone searching for something they know was no longer there. I wasn't afraid. At my age, you've seen enough not to be afraid of such things. When Lucia came back around noon, her father and I were listening to the radio, a station playing old music. Domingo was humming softly with his eyes closed, a melody I also recognized without knowing its name. Lucia stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him. Then she looked at me. She didn't say anything, but in her eyes, I saw something I only understood after a while. It wasn't just relief. It was the look of someone who had been watching her father disappear for months and suddenly saw a small piece of him present again. That afternoon, she brought me a can of lentils. "I cooked too much, Pilar. Please." I didn't want to take it, but she insisted. "You help me. Let me help you too." She said it as if it were the simplest thing in the world. And so everything began to change. Every morning when Lucia had to be at work before 9 a.m., I went up to the 4th floor. Domingo got used to seeing me. He couldn't always say who I was, but when I came in, something in him calmed down. I saw it in his shoulders, which relaxed, in his breathing, which became steadier. One day, about 3 weeks after I started doing this, I came in and Domingo was more restless than usual. He was pacing the hallway, talking to himself, looking for something he couldn't find. With that fear that scares you because you don't know where it comes from or how to stop it. I stood in front of him without blocking him. I was just there. I slowly said his name. He looked at me, and then he did something I didn't expect. He took my hands, both of them. He held them between his, those big hands of a man who had worked in the fields his whole life, and he looked at me with a clarity I had never seen in him before. Then, with a completely calm voice, he said, "You remind me of my mother." I didn't know what to say. He continued. My mother had this way of being there without making noise, as if the place where she was became still. Then he let go of my hands, went back to his armchair, and 30 seconds later, he was looking out the window again, lost in another place. I stayed standing, my hands still warm from his. Lucia had seen it all from the doorway. She had come back earlier than expected and was standing in the doorway without my having heard her. When I turned around, she wasn't crying her usual suppressed cry. She was really crying, with her hand over her mouth. I asked if she was okay. She said, "He hasn't recognized me in weeks, and now he tells you that you remind him of his mother." I didn't have an answer for that, because there was no answer. It was just one of those moments you can't explain but feel deep inside. I sat with her in the kitchen until she calmed down. I gave her water. She told me things she had kept to herself for a long time, that there were weeks when she came home from work and her father didn't even look at her, that some nights she wondered if he was still in there at all, that sometimes she cried in the bathroom so he wouldn't hear. I told her he was still there, that I saw it. From then on, things changed in ways I never could have predicted. Lucia came home calmer. That tense haste you used to see in her whole body began to fade. Her husband came home one weekend and fixed my kitchen faucet, which had been dripping for months. He changed a light bulb I couldn't reach. Lucia showed me how to order groceries online with my phone. I thought that sort of thing wasn't for me, but she sat down next to me and explained it step by step. Domingo and I found our own way of being together. We didn't always talk. Sometimes it was enough to just be in the same room, him in his armchair, me in the chair across from him, the radio on in the background. He hummed. I knitted. Two old people sharing the silence of the morning. One day, Lucia said something to me I'll never forget. She said, "Pilar, you've changed my life." I was drowning, working, coming home, taking care of him, working again. Some days I cried alone in my car in the parking lot before going upstairs. But now I can breathe again. You've given me back something I thought I had lost. My eyes filled with tears. I said, "You've given it back to me too, my child. I had forgotten what it's like to be needed, to be truly useful. And at 90, that's the only thing you can't buy. And that's what was missing from everything else I had tried." With Carmen, I felt like a burden, even if no one said it. The caregivers did their job and left. In the nursing home, I was a number on a list. But this was different. I wasn't just receiving help, I was giving it too. Domingo needed me. Lucia needed me. And I needed them just as much as they needed me. I thought about all the savings I had spent, the caregivers who came and went, the months I felt like inventory to be managed. Now I was spending almost nothing and had more real help than ever before. The kind of help that comes from someone who helps you because you matter to them, not because they're paid to. Money buys services, but it doesn't buy this. If you're feeling something right now that you can't quite name, that's exactly why this channel exists. Like this video if you want these stories to reach the people who need them most, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next. I'm 90 years old. I've tried everything. And this arrangement with my neighbor from the 4th floor, this thing no one planned, is what works. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. Because we truly need each other. Getting older doesn't make you useless. It just changes what you have to give. I can't carry heavy bags anymore, but I can sit with a man who's losing himself and make sure the room grows still. I can listen. I can be there. I have time. I have everything I've lived through. You don't have to choose between struggling alone and disappearing into a place where you're just waiting for the end. There's another option. Community. A real community where people need each other for real reasons. To those of you watching this who have a father, a mother, or an elderly person in your life who needs help, don't assume you know what they need. Ask them. Really listen. And to those of you my age facing these kinds of decisions, you don't have to disappear just because you need help. Look around. Who in your life might need what you still have to give? That morning, I almost walked right past Lucia without saying anything. But I stopped. I opened my mouth. I offered my help, and it changed everything. I'm not saying everything is perfect now. I still have hard days. Maybe one day I'll reach a point where I need more help than Lucia can give me. I'll deal with that when the time comes. But that day isn't today. Today, I went up to the 4th floor at the usual time. Domingo and I listened to the radio. When I got up to leave, he said something I didn't expect. Without looking at me, his eyes fixed on the window, he said, "You're coming back tomorrow, right?" I told him yes, that I'd be back tomorrow. That's what I had lost with all the other solutions, the chance to be someone's first choice, someone who matters. I'd love to know how old you are and where you're listening from. Write it in the comments if you'd like. I love knowing how far these stories reach. Until next time, take care of yourselves and the people you have around you. You never know who might change your life. G.